Hello everyone, welcome to the Ahdurin region. I am your host, Ahdurin himself, and welcome back to another Pokemon Challenge video, again in Blue Rescue Team here on the channel. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe, comment, do all those things you ought to do when supporting a YouTube channel, as these challenges take a lot of time and appreciate all the support. This challenge here is an interesting one, as we are trying to beat Pokemon Blue Rescue Team with the only move available being Explosion. The reason why I word it like that is because, as you'll soon see, items and or the A attack will be absolutely necessary. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So, without further ado, let us begin. The easiest way I found to get Explosion on our starter Pokemon that I'll soon be transforming into permanently for the rest of the run is to start off as two of the Regis. Registeel, Regice, Regirock all have Explosion at level 1 according to the Fire Red and Leaf Green moveset, which is what this game is based off of. As a result, easy thing to do, transform to them. When we go into the first dungeon, we'll have Explosion on us as our only move, and then quickly into the dungeon, we just transform right back. Explosion is an interesting move, as you'll soon see. Explosion itself is a move 12 power points that ignores accuracy and evasion checks. It causes a 5x5 explosion that's centered around them, targeting all Pokemon in the area, whether you're a friend or foe. Deals 80 damage to all of the enemy Pokemon. That's a straight cut, there's no way of getting higher or lower, and halves the current HP of the player Pokemon, guaranteeing at least 1 HP of damage, as if you consider it recoil, I suppose. It does not, however, knock you out. Also, as you may have noticed, or eventually will notice, it also breaks down the walls and items and stuff as a result, so you can actually create bigger rooms or blow up items in the nearby area, which is very interesting. Explosion is a more powerful version of Self-Destruct, which in and of itself is a sort of similar move in the Mystery Dungeon game. 12 power points, a 3x3 explosion that's based around where you are, 40 health points of damage to enemy Pokemon, having the damage of the current player Pokemon, so Explosion very much better than Self-Destruct. Same sort of impact of breaking down walls and items and other things like that. Now, there are a couple of ways that we can get around this. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, at this point in the run, I didn't know about those, including the starter Pokemon we chose. I chose these at random because I like Mudkip, and Cubone's a Pokemon that I've never really used in these type of games, so I thought it'd be fun. Besides, we're only using Explosion, it's not like the moves are going to particularly matter. But as you'll soon see later on in the run, it does have some interesting aspects to it. Another interesting thing, you might have noticed it in the previous dungeon, you might be noticing it now. Usually by the time you get out of Tiny Woods, or at the very least the early parts of Thunderwave Cave, you would be at least level 6. Did you notice it there? We'll soon get to what exactly the situation is. There it is again. I might be taunting you right here, I'm not 100% sure if you're noticing it or not, but nevertheless, it is an interesting thing that we'll soon get to in about a moment. Explosion, though, from my perspective, great move. 80 health points of damage. The beginning of this game is going to be a breeze. We can go different directions, it doesn't matter. We'll just cause explosions as we continue forward. I show the 5th floor for a reason, because for the first time in the entirety of this dungeon, granted, we've been kind of just roaming around exploding everything left and right, for the first time in this dungeon, as ourselves after transforming back from Regirock and Registeel, I throw a Gravel Rock and level up a lot. Now, the first time I go through this, I'm thinking, oh, this must be because when I started as Regirock and Registeel, I have a level 5 experience points of this amount, and then when I transform into these Pokemon that have to reach that level, later on, it just collects all at once. That's not quite it. Did you notice it there as well? The weird thing is, throughout this entire game, throughout this entire run, as we save the Magnemites and continue on with our journey, exploding Pokemon don't give us experience points. Meaning that all of those Pokemon that we've defeated in the past, they don't give us experience if we use Explosion on them. If we use any other move, an A attack, a Gravel Rock, or some other sort of item, then it's fine. That's an interesting thing, especially later on in the run, so keep that in mind, throw that in the back pocket, we'll get back to that in a moment. For now, though, it's our first boss battle against Skarmory. This is going to be really, really tough. It's going to be so hard. We got the Reviver Seeds and everything just for preparation. I'm really nervous about this fight. Can you tell I'm being a little sarcastic here? Because as you'll soon see, this is not nearly as complicated. One explosion, boom, game over. Notice again, though, we didn't get experience points there. In future games, or at least in the Explorers of Sky, Time, Darkness games, beating bosses don't give you experience, I believe. These games they do, didn't get it there. Again, another interesting fact to note. Because of that experience gain that we got in part due to being Regirock and Registeel to start off with, we did get a boost in level that does help us a little bit. It's not going to impact the story all too much because we'll soon have gotten to these levels, theoretically speaking, anyway. In fact, we're not going to level up very quickly at all, so getting these experience points and levels and defensive bonuses are cool, but not really going to make too much of a difference. Next boss battle here against Gengar and the squad. It's fun that we actually get to fight the enemies in this game, unlike in Time Darkness Sky where we don't fight Team Skull. With this one, I thought a Gravel Rock was needed. Nah, not even. Everybody here with less than 80 health points of damage. Gengar's got less than 100, but very quickly dispatch of them and move on to the next item on our list. You might be able to tell, we're zooming through this game. We have not lost a single battle, not lost in a single dungeon. We don't have to worry about these monsters or anything like that. The Silent Chasm doesn't even have a boss battle in it that we have to worry about. So it's just kind of just spam explosions when we need to, use A attacks or gravel rocks if we're far away, continue with our journey from there. For the most part, despite the fact that we're using explosion, which is very different from every other run through that you might be going through on a regular basis, outside of that, it's a pretty normal run. Get through this dungeon without a problem, jump bluff is fine, shiftery is not, and sooner or later, bam, pitch black turn into Zapdos, which is here. Very, very scary. Unfortunately, or fortunately for us, Shiftery is gone and we don't have to worry about them until we go to Mount Thunder, where there is a boss battle in this, and this one is the first time I'm thinking, oh, this might be something we have to worry about a little bit. Because boss battles, as you might know in these games, a lot more health points, a lot more things to worry about when it comes to this as opposed to any other sort of dungeon or any other opponent. Regular opponents in the dungeon have regular health points. The bosses have more because they're bosses, and so they just get that little HP boost that we have to worry about. As you can see here, we're trying to make sure that we basically avoid anybody that of major consequence. Our team here, very weak against grass types, which isn't ideal. The electric weakness is actually counteracted, I suppose, by my ground immunity and my lightning rod ability I believe I have, making electric type moves not really a problem here. The Zapdos fight, one that I thought was going to be much more complicated, especially with Rocky over here jumping forward in the fight. I'm thinking, hey, let's go back and get away. I'm holding onto the B button this entire time without really realizing it and just run down. I'm thinking, oh no, I've ruined this run. That's it. Gotta restart the Zapdos fight, because this is going to be a pain. We gotta switch on the, let's go together and using the explosions and trying to make sure that we can defeat this. Use the explosions, go for it. This is going to be much more complicated. We've used our Reviver Seed. Oh no! Well, it's not actually that complicated because the lightning rods make all the electric attacks go away from Mudkip, and Zapdos has maybe like 240, 250 health. So at the end of the day, we're able to beat Zapdos. All's well that ends well. It's great. It's fine. Shiftery is fine. In fact, there's nothing to be concerned about. It's not like we're, in the middle of the most dangerous time in this entire world's universe. It's not like we're a human that may or may not be a prophecy and trying to show everything off. Alakazam's like, go meet Xatu, and we're like, cool, we get to meet a Xatu, that's fun. This particular scene right here, nothing ominous about that. Yep, nothing at all. Nothing at all. I don't know why I sound like Ned Flanders on The Simpsons. Anyway, we go over to the Grand Canyon, the Great Canyon, the Big Canyon. A little bit more complicated. Now we got to start worrying about Fury attacking folks. But you can see here, our defenses are pretty high as well, or at least high enough that we don't have to worry about too much damage being dealt to us. We still have the ability of exploding people. At this point in the run, I'm not 100% sure if I realize that explosion doesn't give us experience, but ultimately, nothing to really be concerned about. We get to the Xatu meeting here. Xatu doesn't tell us much at all. It's all fine. It's nothing to worry about. We try to talk to Xatu. Xatu's staring out into the sun. Do not recommend this. I think Xatu, being a psychic type, probably has his eyes closed. I don't think much could notice that. Anyway, we're about to attack, I think, with explosion here before Xatu's like, nah, man, don't do that. I'm going to tell you some interesting things instead. The sun tells me you're a human. The sun tells me you two are involved in big things. The natural disasters, everything chaotic. I'm going through the story really quickly here, as you can probably tell. The world's destruction. This is nothing ominous at all. Gengar being all like, oh, Aaron was a human? That's not ominous at all. You might be wondering why we got here. Well, we ran from the community, I guess, because it turns out that was a big deal. And we jump straight into Lapis Cave. Can you tell that these recaps, especially with the giant story being cut out, aren't exactly the best here? Lapis Cave, though, is interesting because now we're starting to get into a point where our A attacks aren't actually doing a lot of damage. At this point, I'm starting to notice, hey, experience points need to be collected, and so we need to make sure that we end the fight with a Pokemon with a Gravel Rock or an A attack or something like that. Starting it doesn't really matter, ending it's the important thing. We get to Mount Blaze. Now, Mount Blaze introduces an interesting problem, and we'll soon talk about that in a second. For now, though, we get through here, grab our items, get to Mount Blaze, charge right through. Let's see if we notice it here. As we continue forward, I don't bring a lot of items because it's not that important. Throw the Gravel Rock, all fine and dandy here. In fact, the fire types, you'd think me being a ground type, Mudkip being a water type, would be fine. But it turns out they're significantly more complicated. As we jump over to the 6th floor here, you might have noticed lots of fire here. That's a thing to be noted about. The smog and other sort of moves like that are causing a lot more damage. The gravel rocks and A attacks are not enough to the point where the rock throw here actually knocks us out. And in fact, this soon starts another trend that you might have noticed. I've been keeping a couple of details away from you, and as we enter into the Moltres fight, you'll see what those details are. So Moltres thinks that we're the ones causing all the destruction. It's not us. Moltres is going to blame us anyway, and a fight commences. Now, Moltres, being in the middle of the game, has middle of the game boss battle energy. We've got our explosions ready. You might notice it does 40 damage as opposed to 80. And this is where the problem comes in. You see, I kept the specific detail away from you guys, partly because it was, story-wise, it was great as we go through multiple attempts after multiple attempts here. You see, fire types take half the usual damage from explosion, meaning that Moltres here, with 400 health points, instead of taking 80 per explosion, takes 40 per explosion. And throughout this entire game, I have not been collecting Reviver Seeds as I should have been, meaning that this entire game is in a sort of soft-locked situation. I actually returned to the entrance, hoping that we got some Reviver Seeds or stuff like that. I've got the 1 here, and that's not going to be enough to beat this game. We need more. We need the ability to stay alive for longer, and despite attempt after attempt, I try strategies with Sleep Seeds. I try all sorts of picking up different items in the dungeon, trying to see if those are helpful at all. I go through Rock Path thinking we can train up a little bit more. Not only can we not train particularly well, I think partly based, I'm not 100% sure if this is the case, it might be because we started off as Regirock and Registeel and it's using those level up bonuses, or it might just be our level being not good enough here. Despite Gravel Rocks, despite moving around, despite explosion after explosion, we tried Power Bands and Sleep Seeds and Oran Berries and all sorts of different strategies, they ultimately aren't successful. This is where I sort of soft-lock myself. By not having Reviver Seeds and not having an easy way to get Reviver Seeds in the middle of the game, we're kind of stuck here. We can't get past the Moltres fight because Moltres is always going to be able to defeat us. And no matter how far or how much time we spend going through these dungeons, I can spend hours going through these dungeons. And unless I find, an infinite number of Sleep Seeds and get lucky RNG from Moltres to constantly sleep while my partner uses Explosion over and over again, on top of that, the fact that at best we have 1 Reviver Seed means that if any of us faint due to our own explosions, that causes a problem as well. We gotta choose a new starter as a result. I have to restart the entire game. Now, I went through that specific link, which is also in the description down below, to find the best starter for this game. A Pokemon that has high defenses, high HP, an easy experience growth, and resistant fire and flying types. There's a lot of options here. And because of my ability to use action replay codes, I can pick any of these options without too much problem. I went through, tried to find the one that was best. You might notice a couple of trends out here. These are sorted currently by special defense. Doesn't really matter though. Up at the top there, the second one on the list, Psyduck and Cyndaquil are some of the best starters, I think, for this particular run through. As a result, I choose to go with that. My partner's name here, I decided to change it up. I go with Scratch here. Why do I say Scratch? Well, here's a little bit of promotion / ad time. I have a podcast called Not a Scratch. It's a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon TTRPG actual play podcast. It's a fun thing. We've got nearly 100 episodes at this point. Don't worry though if you're scared by that. Completely understand. There are summary episodes as well. If you scroll down enough, you can find each of the arc summaries. Highly recommend it. It's a fun journey, especially if you like story playing things and want Mystery Dungeon games to come back. You can check that out. That's somewhere in the description down below or on the channel. You can check that out if you haven't already. For now, though, I also renamed myself to Ahdurin in this run because this is my second time going through this specific challenge and I was scared it wasn't going to work particularly well. But as myself eventually going to turn into Psyduck, my partner being Cyndaquil, this is going to be great. We've got high defenses on me, high HP with my partner here. I'm a water type, so I can go explore the water areas. Partner's a fire type, they can go explore the fire areas if needed be. And I think we've got a good type combination there, right? Because that's the big thing. I want to make sure that we have the type combination and the ability to use Explosion and go through perfectly fine. Here's the thing. I've been keeping another thing from you. Here's the big thing about that. Explosion can't be used if the current weather on the floor is rain or if there's a Pokemon with damp somewhere on the floor. Well, turns out, being a Psyduck means that we have damp on the floor. It's kind of hard to cause an explosion if we're preventing the explosion. So back to the drawing board here. Psyduck's out of the question at this point. You look at the very top of the list, as you might have been wondering why I didn't choose that Pokemon. Well, after going through again and sorting by defenses, I found that Charmander has some of the highest defenses in the game. While that experience growth isn't particularly great and the HP is middle of the pack, it certainly was an option, and having two fire types here actually benefits me in a way that we'll talk about in a split second. For now though, I decide that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to be a Charmander, partner's going to be a Cyndaquil, two fire types, hopefully being able to resist all the fire type moves that come at us. Cyndaquil having great defenses, our defenses are being really good, or Cyndaquil having great HP, my defenses being pretty good. Ultimately, hopefully, will be good enough that we can go through from there. We continue on with our adventure here. We had to restart from the beginning. In fact, we're just going to cut through very quickly all of the different story beats, so to speak. But you might notice something interesting as we go into Tiny Woods here. So, us being Registeel, Regirock, that's all fine and dandy. We have to use this to continue going forward, so we just zoom through this first particular floor here after I stopped going through menus for some reason. I don't know why it took me so long to go through. You'd think I had played this game enough that I would know how the menus work, but apparently, no, just still struggling to click buttons, as seems to be the trend here. Also, why I went this way, I'm still wondering myself. The stairs are there. Go on the stairs, man. There we go. Anyway. Get into Tiny Woods here. Explosion, Cyndaquil with Explosion as well, all fine and dandy. You see the negative experience points there? That's why we jumped up a lot, because Registeel and Regirock have higher XP barriers there, so we jump up the levels here. Also making sure throughout this entire run to switch off the moves that aren't Explosion, as you might have noticed throughout this entire run, because, you know, I want to make sure my partner doesn't break the rules here. I'm going through these stats here. I wonder if I use Explosion. Do I use it? There we go. You might notice there, the recoil damage is not half. Well, when I said that fire types take half damage, I mean all fire types, including ourselves. This is actually really helpful because instead of taking half recoil damage, it takes quarter recoil damage, meaning that our ability to play in the battle for the long run is actually that much better. Had I known this coming in, absolutely would have chosen two fire types to start off with and go from there. Second time's the charm, I suppose. I'm also trying to make sure we take full advantage of the ability to get experience points. So in all of these boss battles, I'm not using Explosion unless I can. If I have the ability to use Explosion, I try to use Explosion. For multiple Pokemon like these, where we have 3 foes in a row, I don't mind this. I just use Explosion to get this over with because all 3 of them have 80 or less health points. But in all of the other major boss battles and single opponent battles, I try to manipulate it so that, you know, after doing research online and trying to find how much HP they have, throwing in rocks, spikes, whatever is necessary. Going forward, I try to make sure that I time it. I guess time it basically is the best way to describe it. I time it so that the final hit that we do gives us experience points here. I don't know if I do it particularly well in the Zapdos fight. We'll soon find out, I suppose. Explosion, and then after a regular attack, I try the gravel rock. The explosion I think might knock you out. Yeah, okay. But going forward, I absolutely do my best to make sure I earn the experience points that I can. We get through the Xatu point, we attack Xatu, potentially. It'd be really funny if they showed an actual move here, just like trying to use Explosion. Cyndaquil exploding right next to Xatu would be hilarious. We get through Lapis Cave without an issue. In fact, this run, the fact that we're not doing as much recoil damage to ourselves makes this run significantly easier than it was previously. Instead of having to balance our health throughout this entire run, now we can be a little bit safer when it comes to that, and in fact, we get right back to Mount Blaze. Now, getting through Mount Blaze wasn't too much of an issue beforehand, so now it'll be that much easier. Throughout this entire game, I've been collecting Reviver Seeds, a lot of Reviver Seeds. You can see right there we got 13 right now. I think my peak at some point in this game is around 20. Because they're very important, especially for boss battles where we just have to outlast opponents. Without Reviver Seeds, this challenge would be impossible. Keeping that in mind, there is no way we can do this challenge without Reviver Seeds. Even with the best RNG luck, at a certain point, with best RNG luck and Oran Berries and other items, at a certain point later on in the game, it just becomes impossible. We'll have done too much recoil damage to ourselves to be able to survive the battles, especially in the later boss battles that have significantly more HP. From this point though, timing it properly, I've done all the research that I needed, and we have Reviver Seeds to burn, so I actually take the time to like switch off the explosions and make sure that we're just A attacking. It's cool, we can burn through the Reviver Seeds if we need, and the experience, any additional defense, special defense bonuses, HP bonuses are amazing to have. So, the Moltres fight is done, somewhat surprisingly, I think in my opinion, but it does take a lot. It takes 10 explosions, I believe, with Moltres having 400 health points. So we had to time that out properly, doing the 9, and then start grapple rocking and regular A attacking from there. The Moltres fight is ultimately, though, successful. You might think, oh, okay, well, going through the boss battles in this game, Moltres, hardest fight, it's smooth sailing from here. Well, to a certain extent, yes. Boss battle-wise, Moltres, in my opinion, after coming through this entire game, finishing the game, Moltres, in my opinion, hardest boss fight, simply because of that factor, the fact that we have to stay alive for so many rounds and make sure that Moltres doesn't beat us in the process. In terms of hardest part of the game, well, we'll get to that a little bit later. For now, though, it's time to get through the Frosty Forest here. There's a boss battle at the end of this with Articuno. Same sort of strategy applies, though, once we get through the boss battles, or once we get through this dungeon, the boss battle is actually going to be easier because now we're back up to dealing 80 health points of damage per attack. Articuno does not have significantly more HP than Moltres does, so it's not going to be too much of an issue from there. In fact, zooming through the Frosty Forest, getting to this point, Articuno shows up. Oh no, what are we going to do? The spread move issue could be a slight concern, the ability to use Powder Snow that Articuno has. If we didn't have 50 million Reviver Seeds in the back, could be a problem. In this case, though, we've got a few Reviver Seeds. Looks like we have 4 or 5 there. Explosions, at this point, just trying to, go through it from there. I'm not particularly sure. Did I focus on the ability to... Here's the Powder Snow that knocks me out. Powder Snow knocking me out also introduces another aspect of the game that's interesting, which is when Reviver Seeds revive you, you gain back all your power points. In the next dungeon, not the next one, the one after this one that you might be recognizing, the long one, the one that has a lot of things that could beat us, in that dungeon, having the ability to revive ourselves actually helps us in the long run. We'll get to that, though, a little bit later. For now, though, Articuno is defeated. Articuno's about to beat us up, though, despite that, and Absol's like, nah. It's not them. We come in peace. And then Articuno flies away. Absol saves us, joins us on the adventure immediately, just like with Magnemite. As soon as you join, I'm kicking you off the team. By kicking you off the team, I mean just sending you right back home. An aspect I didn't realize was part of the game until a long time later. I didn't realize you could just send them home, but very helpful to do from there. We have a little heart-to-heart here before going into Mount Freeze. Mount Freeze, thankfully speaking, does not have a boss battle involved, which is great because that means we don't have to bring 1,000 Reviver Seeds. I don't even know if I bring one, just because all we need at that point is the ability to survive for an extended period of time. I bring a couple, okay. Throughout this entire run as well, every time we have gummies, I've been trying to feed them to my partner, just because having a higher IQ helps out with those special abilities that partner Pokemon and you technically get to have, though for you it's not really as impactful as your partner in the main storyline of the game. Mount Freeze is here. Freeze, unlike other dungeons that we've been to relatively recently, mainly Mount Blaze for the entirety of Mount Blaze, doesn't have anywhere that we can walk on. I try to use the fire steps to either avoid Pokemon or try to take advantage of the ability to fight certain Pokemon, use gravel rocks from a distance, etc. Ultimately, not very big of a deal. Mount Freeze, boss battle time. That's right, we're fighting Alakazam. I'm, bam, got that. Alakazam struggling against level 15 Pokemon here. Ninetales stops the fight before we wreck the floor with Team ACT, and Ninetales is like, hey, that prophecy that I made way back when, transforming a human into a Pokemon, that's not you. Good news, you're just another human that turned into a Pokemon. Good for you. Also, the world's balance and that prophecy thing, yeah, they just happened at the same time. They were just the same time. Look, man, look. I didn't mean to do them at the same time. It just happened that way. It's your fault for actually, mixing them together. Also, the world's about to go destroy, right now. So, go solve the Groudon issue. Team ACT does that. time to go to the next dungeon. For some reason, every time I play through this game, I think Magma Cavern is the next dungeon, and it's not. It's Uproar Forest. For anyone that watches J-Rose, this is the equivalent of missing on Erica, in my opinion. Just like going through the game and forgetting that Erica exists. Even though this is a mandatory aspect of the game, you can't choose when you want to do it. This is the exact same thing. I always forget this dungeon happens during the run. I, for some reason, think it's like an optional thing you can do after the game. That's the Smeargle thing I'm thinking of. This is not that. Anyway. Go through the dungeon. Uproar Forest is significantly easier than we've been dealing with, and I'm not particularly interested in dealing with multiple foes. One explosion knocks them all out. All fun and dandy. We get a Chestnut, Wobbuffet, Wynut, all fine and dandy, all good, and then the Mankeys come try to beat us up. We, through the power of Chestnuts apparently, don't lose immediately. I don't know why we were concerned here. We just explode and blow up, actually blowing up our street probably wouldn't be a great idea. But regardless of that, it's time to build our new base. So this is actually a mandatory thing, I believe. You need to fix your base up before you can go into the next dungeon, the Magma Cavern section there. So we've got the Chestnut here. We've got a Chestnut in the forest. I believe there's on the 9th floor, there's like a high chance of getting 1 Chestnut. There's a small chance of getting 0 and a small chance of getting 2. I don't know how many more challenges I plan on doing in Blue Rescue Team. I mean, I'm always interested and I'm going to do them a lot, but it's a small enough chance. I wonder if one of these run-throughs, I'm going to get 2 Chestnuts on 1 floor and just zoom through the game there. I know that's a speedrunner thinking thing. Also, a fun thing here that you might have noticed, during the quiz, I got Squirtle as the Pokemon that I was going to be, but the team base is a Pikachu. I'm not a Pikachu now. Neither my partner nor I were a Pikachu. But I don't know if this is the default or if there's some sort of thing. Maybe I'm mistaken in it. Maybe that's earlier on. But when playing through this game, I'm pretty sure I got Squirtle, as you saw there. Team base is built, all fine and dandy. Looks like Alakazam's team went underground. They haven't returned. Oh no! It's time for us to save the day, right? As the rest of the town square here isn't particularly interested in going down into the underground. We're like, let's do it. Lombre's like, no, we need to stall for time. Slash, you go get more Reviver Seeds. As you know, I'm trying to collect those like Pokemon cards here. A new team is built. Team fine, I guess. I don't know how great this team would be against Groudon. Golem, I think, would be really rough against Groudon, but the other two are pretty solid, so you know, sure, why not? Good luck. I don't know why Golem wants to throw a rock at a Groudon, but you know, whatever floats your boat. Especially considering Blastoise knows that Groudon is part ground type. But Golem, you know, shout out to you. This is literally the next day, based on the number of missions, which I find hilarious if you do it this way. The next day, we walk into Town Square and see all 3 of them painted in the dungeon itself. I find this very funny for some reason. Gengar's like, look, you guys are trying. How dare you try? Trying is for triers, and you guys are trying too hard. Ha 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 ha. And we're like, well, the blot. We must continue the game. We need to see if we can beat Groudon using only Explosion. Gengar's surprised by that, probably because he's confused at the fact that there's a Cyndaquil and Charmander that know Explosion and are like level 12 and 15 or something around those lines. Through the power of motivational speeches and Gengar just being Gengar, we motivate the team to go back again. The entire town square is ready to charge into Magma Cavern. It is Magma Cavern, right? I'm doing this, as you can tell, unscripted without any notes or anything like that. I'm just recapping the game here. I hope I've been saying it right. Without further ado, though, let us jump into Magma Cavern here. Yes, it is Magma Cavern. Okay, good. We go into Magma Cavern. Magma Cavern is another dungeon that is going to be a problem for us, as you can probably tell, because of the fact that there's a lot of fire types in this dungeon, a lot of rock types that can beat us, a lot of ground types that can beat us, and for the first time ever in this game so far, an explosion is not enough to defeat our opponents. Now, this is actually, in a weird way, a good thing. Using the explosion deals 80 damage, and then an A attack or a grapple rock afterwards actually gives us the experience afterwards. As long as you defeat your opponent without using explosion as your final move, then you still get the experience points there. So ultimately, we're trying to collect experience points in a regular way, just explosion followed by attack. But Magma Cavern is hard. Monster houses are now prevalent. I believe Uproar Forest is the first dungeon with monster houses. You'd think explosion and having explosion would be a good thing, even though it does blow up the items in the monster houses. It's still good. In this dungeon, though, not really, because with all the fire types around us, they're also dealing half. The explosion damage is cut in half, so it takes multiple explosions to beat them. All the other opponents are still alive after one explosion as well, especially like Mawiles and Ekans, and not Ekans, Arbok and other folks like that. So it becomes significantly more complicated, and we have to start managing our power points here. Having the Reviver Seeds on hand, still not particularly helpful. It feels like there are opponents everywhere in Magma Cavern. I'm not sure why that's the case, but it's something that we have to worry about. Using the spikes and other aspects like that as well, trying to see if we can deal more damage there. Macargos, for some reason in this game, are incredibly annoying. They're not the worst. Later on in this dungeon, we'll find the worst. Here's somebody that's up there. Gravelers with magnitude like that are tragic. We're out of, Reviver Seeds at this point. I just reset. I'm not interested in going through this game because I know I'm going to need multiple Reviver Seeds when getting to Groudon. Having one at this early point, not needed. We get into this point here using Explosion. This is actually going to be another fun situation where a Poison Sting knocks us out, which is, kind of embarrassing, not going to lie. Getting through this run again, you can tell, Magma Cavern, this is, in my opinion, the hardest dungeon to go through. Mount Blaze has the hardest boss battle, this has the hardest dungeon. Not only is it long, not only is it trying, it's complicated, there's a lot of foes. The fire here, while somewhat helpful at times, isn't helpful to us, I think, or at least maybe my run-throughs were, unlucky. But with the number of fire opponents there, the fact that the Gravelers can use self-destruct, that deals a lot of damage to us. The magnitudes are painful to us as fire types. And it just leads to a point where, despite all our efforts here, we try explosion after explosion after explosion. We're not able to get burned, which is some slight benefit there. But at a certain point, and also, regular moves that they're doing can knock us out, which isn't great. This one annoyed me the most. Onyx, in my opinion, is probably the hardest or second hardest opponent to face. They have powerful moves like Dragon Breath that deal distance damage. Onyxes are just tanky as well. I think they've got around 100 health or so, somewhere in that ballpark. And they're throwing items. Stop throwing items. We're out of power points. I can't survive this. You throw the Iron Thorns. We can't do much of anything. The explosion's not enough. Cynicals run out, we get knocked out. This is on the final floor too. That's what annoyed me about this. I don't know why I'm going to a rant like this, but we get to the final floor. Anyway, next run through, we're able to go through here. Got lucky. First floor in the pit is actually remarkably easy. You could theoretically just reset until you get to the stairs. And that time you just run down. Second floor is that little scene there. Third floor is the Groudon boss fight. The Groudon fight is fine. It's cool. I wanted to gain experience here, so I had to make sure I kept track of experience. If you weren't worried about that, just Explosion Go Burr is good as well. I threw the Grapple Rock there and then reset all of these things. But yeah, just keeping track. I believe Groudon has 600 experience points. Or not experience, sorry, 600 HP. So that was something that I wanted to make sure I kept track of, just making sure we use that, keeping track of it on the side, making sure that we can collect the experience that we needed, switching off the my friends, switching off Scratch's explosion there, and then just making sure we throw Grapple Rocks, doing the little damage that we can here. Eventually leads us to success. We defeat Groudon. All is well. All of these guys are great. Everything is all fine and dandy. Nothing to worry about as well. We need to leave. Boom. It's an earthquake again. We're zooming through. It's now time to go to Sky Tower. On the right, you can see the list of items that I had. Basically, throw stuff, Oran Berries, and 10 Reviver Seeds. Buying an extra one right here as well. So that is the 10th one that I'm buying. This, I think, is enough. The dungeon itself is going to be complicated. There's a lot of foes that we have to go up against that are going to be a pain. Aerodactyl is going to be the single most annoying Pokemon, I think, in this entire run-through, because it's a Pokemon that can survive over 100 health points of damage. An explosion plus a Gravel Rock is not enough to knock it out, and it has agility, which just makes things significantly more complicated. It's got rock moves, it's got wing attack, it's just a lot of painful things. And then, of course, there's like Salamence. There's a bunch of rock-type Pokemon. There are ghosts as well. Shuppet using Curse is not going to be fun. Duskull, Dusclops, and other Pokemon like that. But Sky Tower we go. Now, I think Sky Tower actually could be easier than Magma Cavern, so I'm crossing my fingers on that. And for PowerPoint regeneration, you saw previously I had Max Elixirs. I don't need them because when I faint, I recover PowerPoints. So as a result, I just try to take advantage of that. Us not using Explosion as well, kind of helps us in this particular spite here. Our regular A attacks actually have the potential to do 0 damage. You'll see that later on, just because our opponent's defense is that high. The A attacks are based off of our attack, and then defenses are based on their defense. It's like a physical move, which is part of the reason why I have the Power Band. Scratch having the Heal Ribbon is partly just because healing them is particularly more impactful than healing us, because we can heal ourselves at any point in time. They can't because they're the NPC, so it's slightly more advantageous that way. And getting through trying to beat Aerodactyl and a bunch of foes like this is very tough. Tropius is going to be just an additional icing on the cake. We get to the 6th floor here. This is where a new issue comes up. On the 6th floor, it is guaranteed rain. Guaranteed rain means that we can't use explosion at all. It turns into a damp condition situation, which means our game turns into find the stairs as quickly as you can. We don't have another move. Our A attacks do literally nothing. Gravel rocks here, that's 20 damage. You see right there? That A attack, 0 damage. 1 damage here. That's Syndiquil being lucky. And we want to make sure we don't burn our Reviver Seeds in the dungeon. We need them for Rayquaza, the final boss fight. So we just continue to search here. We're trying to fight off all these opponents. This would be remarkably easy if we were able to use regular moves. I mean, 2 fire types against a Metagross feels like it'd be easy, but that's not the case there. And we try our hardest. Also, with us avoiding Pokemon, the longer we avoid, the more foes show up. You can see right there at a certain point, I think there are 4 Aerodactyls on the screen at the same time, which is not great. Right, let's see. It's about to be there, I think. There's 3, and then there's the 4th one downstairs. Not great. So with Pokemon generating, it's like based on the steps. I think it's like every, not 100%. Suppose it's like every 30 steps or so a new Pokemon generates on the floor. They don't disappear. You have to defeat them. So theoretically, if you were avoiding them for the longest time, then they would just generate until the entire floor, I suppose, would be covered by monsters. Not ideal. And especially running out of Reviver Seeds, it just, bad situation. Eventually just had to reset at that point. We were not going to defeat Rayquaza with 1 Reviver Seed. In this situation here, we go through, run through again. At this point, it's just luck. Can we find the stairs before we run out of Reviver Seeds? Aerodactyl being a pain does not help. But luckily, on our second run through here, after finding a little bit of Poke, we're able to find the stairs relatively quickly and just zoom through. It is time for the final boss fight against Rayquaza. Experience doesn't matter anymore. Keynote, I don't need to worry about health points or anything like that. We've got a few Reviver Seeds in the back pocket. It is time for us to just use Explosion, making sure my partner's ready. We've got a few Reviver Seeds. Let's just go for Explosion. I believe Rayquaza has around 650, 700 health, so we're just exploding as much as we can. Don't worry about health point. Don't worry about recoil. We've got the Reviver Seeds that boost our power point back up again, value back up again if that mattered. Dragon Dance felt like it would be concerning, but we were ultimately successful. That's the run. If you want to exit here, that's fine. But I do have a little bit to talk about. If you guys have seen the story, you know how this goes. Let's talk, me and you, for the last 2 and change of the video. We have reached on this channel 1,000 subscribers, which is surprising, I'll be honest. As a person who makes a YouTube channel with inconsistent content consisting of a variety of games that I'm just interested in playing in, whether it's Pokemon mystery games, Pokemon mystery dungeon games, or everything in between. But I appreciate that everybody's interested in the content that we make and subscribing to it. If you're interested in the longer playthroughs, I highly, highly recommend checking them out because those are the more casual side of things. At the end of the day, the content I create, I'm trying to make it just casual playthroughs that I can look back on and enjoy on my own time. In the way, all of these YouTube channels are kind of just like vaults for all of the content that I produce. So I appreciate you guys subscribing and checking this out. For more challenge ideas, if you're interested in those, I recommend, it's fine if you throw them in the comments. I do want to credit people that give ideas, and the easiest way to do that is go to the community tab on my channel. There is a specific post, and I'll repost this every, when I'm interested in new challenge ideas or something like that. There's a post idea, I think it's probably 2 posts back, that's quite literally just asking for ideas. Please toss it in there so I can credit you if I do a challenge idea that is based on something that you do, or that's something that you recommend. Any challenge idea is fine. Of course, some of them are going to be significantly more complicated than others, and I'll let you know that in advance. If I do your challenge, I might change it up so that it's something either easier to work with or something that I can do in a reasonable amount of time. But thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. This is surprising. I don't know why, but I'm happy that you've joined all the same. And I suppose we could say, go to 2,000 is the next number and just climb our way up the ranks, but I appreciate you watching all the same. Next challenge idea, not even sure what it is. I do have a couple of other videos for other playthroughs that I'm doing. There's the Pokemon Violet playthrough that has been on hiatus for a while. I'm going to try to pick that back up. There's a few episodes in my little storage vault before hitting 1,000 subscribers. This was recorded back then that I just haven't edited yet. I'm going to try to get back onto those and continue on with the adventure from there. For all of you listening, watching, supporting, thank you once again for subscribing, for viewing everything that you guys are doing, hitting that like button, notifications, the whole 9 yards. It's really helpful for YouTube channels, especially small ones like this one is currently, just to get content readily out to you. I don't have a schedule as of yet of how content is produced. As of now, it's kind of just when I have time and I'm in that creative mode, but appreciate you checking it out all the same. Thank you so much for checking out this channel. Recommendation, do I recommend this challenge for you? No. Here's your fun fact of the day. It's an interesting one, but ultimately I'm not sure if it's necessarily one you want to check out. But thank you so much for listening, watching, and supporting in any way, shape, or form that you do. Until next time, take care.